Blah 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 blah. Oh, hello. Oh. Sorry, I'm so unused to you getting it right that when it works, it catches me out.
I'm just going to sit here and glower we don't do enough glowering these days, do we, as a nation? I think we've lost the art of, we've lost the use of the word glower. I think that's a great word. Anyway, hello everybody.
Beaten down by reality.
There is that. Hello everybody. Welcome to the Sunday service with myself and Drufus here. We may be joined by a special guest in a short while. But how are you, Drew? How are you doing? How are you doing?
Not bad. A little bit bit tired this week, but other than that, actually fine. I'm going to box the chieftain up for a while. It's starting to. No, it's fine. I've got the matte varnish on it, and I've started weathering it, but I just feel like I'm wading through treacle a bit at the moment, and I might want to just. I mean, it spent 18 months on the shelf of doom before I picked it up and got it to here. So another month or two on the shelf of doom before I pick it up and actually push through the finish isn't going to hurt, is it? So,
no, not really.
I just get on with something else really at this point.
Well, yeah, so your attention's going to wander, isn't it?
Yeah, and you know, I'd rather box it up and put it aside and accept that I'm not going to finish it very, very soon. But it'll be worth it when I do come back to it. I'd rather not rush it than do you know what I mean? I'd rather put it to one side and let it mature. Shall we
let it be.
So I'd much rather do that and get on with something else in the interim.
What are you doing in the interim? It's almost like you've got your camera set up on the workbench, isn't it?
Well, I've always got it set up on the workbench.
Of course you have. Yeah, you're a professional. You're a professional, darling.
Just there, but no, it will very much. I think be the. It will very much be the Fairy Delta.
Oh, lovely!
Because obviously I've got the mixed the move, shall we say? So yeah, I've mixed the move, and I think it looks. It's rather fetching, isn't it?
It does look rather lovely. Yep.
It's rather fetching, and it also means that I'll be able to. Something I haven't done a lot of recently is that I'll prime with the pink, which I think will really help the.
Is that the Mr. Colour pink primer? Is it?
Yeah, 1500 pink. Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah. So I think sort of priming with that, and then a fairly light coat of that. We'll get the colour we're looking for, won't it? And like I say, that was a lot of faffing around to get there, really, because you've got to pick. You've got to pick fairly pure blues and reds. Like you have to pick a fairly bright, true red like Scarlet and a true blue rather than blue that's got any green or anything in it. Otherwise, it will just go to sort of maroon, which you don't want, because mauve is basically it's just dark pink, isn't it? It's just a dark pink, but in order to get pink rather than a maroon color, you have to look at the color wheel and steer away from shades of blue or red that can shift.
Color wheels?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
These are great, folks. If you've not got one of these, absolutely brilliant. I don't know how I've managed to blunder on for so many decades without having a color wheel. You'd have thought, me being an art student, this would be de rigueur.
I have to say there are plenty of. I mean, with me modelling now with a monitor right there in front of me, there are many many color wheels available online, and you're not really looking for the accuracy of the colors on the color wheel online. All you're looking for is the relationships to work from.
Yep.
So and I mean, it was for I was always trying to mix purple, and I was always ending up with maroon. And it wasn't until I looked at the color wheel and the the thinking behind it that you went, right, I need a true blue and I need a bright red, because you're picking like insignia red or something like that, which is actually a very dull red in truth. And then you're picking a blue and then realizing that actually you're picking a blue that's got quite a lot of green in it, and that also that risks turning it to brown almost. So you've got to find a really true blue without any green in it and a bright red. And then what happens is you get purple, not maroon. Then you've got to remember that if you want to mix maroon, you've got to look for those, because I think red is one of those colors that people tend to think of as just being a color, don't they? And people really don't realize that from scarlet through to brick, there are a huge amount of hues within there and shifts that you have to work with. So you really have to tailor it. And red madder is a great.
I was going to say that those of you with longer memories may recall an article I did for Scale Aircraft Modelling. Goodness me, this is 25 years ago, Drew. And I built the Occidental, what was then the new Occidental Spitfire 9.
Yeah.
Or the accidental Spitfire 9, as I used to think of it. And I spent a lot of time on that kit, refining the shape of the nose and everything. Anyway, long story short, I did it as one of those PR pink ones. But trying to get that PR pink color, because the thing is, you'd kind of like, you'd start off, you'd create a pink, but it's too pink. It's got to be.
You've got to start at white and very, very. It's like the slightest dash of, if I tried to paint a Spitfire with that, it would be, I mean, I did it on that PR1G.
I remember that.
Yeah, you remember the one that didn't get a mention. Look at that! What? Managed to work that in, didn't I?
Let it go. That was 13 years ago, man. Let it go. Let it go.
Oh, did you like how I managed to work that in? That was just, But yeah, looking at, I mean, there's 3 different shades just from Mr. Color. You've got sort of red madder, which is a very much a true, and Ferrari red that Tamiya do is also a very sort of strident, proper red. Then you've got RLM23, which is a very, you almost have to mix grey with red to get RLM23. It's a very, I really like it as a colour. But cool, dear me. I say. I can't get the lid off that. I'll have to. Unbelievable. This is what happens when you've got paints.
Oh, he's got his Mr. Colour.
Best tool ever.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Look what I've got literally right by my by the workshop.
There is nothing left in that look.
Yep.
But if I chucked a bit of
Mr. Colour thinner.
If I chucked a bit of replenisher in there and shook it around for 24 hours, I'd have a pot of paint there.
Yep.
But yeah, it's like, I know we've got sort of wrapped up in a Fairy Delta 2 color mixing, but yeah, it's there are lots of different shades, and it's like that 327, that insignia US insignia red. That is actually quite a dark reddish. And if anybody wonders what live means, it's just that sometimes I seem to accumulate so many pots of paint that I put live on top of the one that I'm currently using, so I don't open another one by accident. So, but yeah, it's oh, dear me. So yeah, I mean, as I remember, that is largely gloss white with red madder, and I think there was I think I might have added just the merest slightest touch of black, but we're talking like fractions of a percent, just to sort of bring it down a bit. But yeah, I really think, looking at photographs, I think I'm sort of there. or enough that I think people
Close enough for government work.
People will still argue over whether I've got the colour right or not, but then
Yeah.
they won't be able to present an actual colour that it is. So
Yep.
it's very much. I mean, you look at colour photographs of that fairy delta, and everyone's different anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't really worry too much about it. But yeah, that at the moment is looking like my favourite to break the creativity logjam.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm. Well, we did have Spence hanging on the line to join us, but he's kind of tooted off again. He obviously got fed up with us waiting to bring him in, so he's gone. So Spence, come on back. We'll bring you back in. I just wanted to let Drew tell his narrative. Anyway, we
we're saying there. Where did those Mr. Colour paint caps come from? Shane, these are how Mr. Colour used to be.
Yes.
This is I think the change came in about 2014, 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And they changed, but they used to be like that to differentiate them from aqueous hobby colours, which always had a cap like that.
Yep.
And Mr. Colour always used to have this kind of lid.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why you have that in your opener. So it so that will slip in there like that to open them. So yeah, that was just all that's always the way it was up till maybe 2014, 2015, Shane. And then they changed to
see, there we go. I actually prefer them like this. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean,
which ones do you like?
I don't know. I've never really had that many of the old ones.
And that's how they changed.
I've probably only had about 4 or 5 of those, and they were all metallics. So I'm kind of I'm a bit of a newbie when it comes to
Mr. Colour Johnny come lately.
I don't. In fact, when I was using Tamiya paint all the time, I tried out Guns paint, the Mr. Hobby range of paints, and absolutely loathed them for quite a long time and thought that they were just absolute garbage. And it wasn't until I guess into the 2000s I sort of changed my opinion really, and so now all of my aircraft, almost without exception, are painted with Guns, and all of my armor, almost without exception, are painted with Tamiya paint. So
I'm exactly the same, Spence. Most of my armor will be done with Tamiya, and my aircraft are done with Mr. Colour generally.
Yeah. It's sort of strange, isn't it? I've sort of stuck with that really, and also, but there are certain things within the Gun Sanyo range as well. The Mr. Hobby paint, I much prefer for gloss finishes. I don't like Mr. Colour for gloss finishes. I don't think it works well for gloss finishes at all. I've never been able to get it to settle properly. Whereas with the longer drying time of the acrylic rather than the lacquer tends to suit me better. And I'm not quite sure why that is. But then both of those are offset by the gloss versions of Tamiya's lacquer paints, which are basically talent in a bottle, aren't they? You really can't go wrong.
Do you know what? So I'm suddenly going a bit Michael Caine here, but
a bit Michael. There's never an episode of this where you don't find a time to go a little bit Michael.
I know I do go a bit Michael Caine sometimes, but I'm just going to quickly ping this because I was doing some painting on my Mandalorian / Star Wars speeder bike today, and oh, how I would have loved to have had some more. That's not it. It's the Tamiya. I haven't got any here to show you. It's their gloss lacquer paint because it is absolutely stunning to work with, and you can really push it and push it and push it, and it is so unforgiving. I ended up
unforgiving.
Sorry, say again.
Unforgiving.
Yeah,
you said unforgiving. That's like really.
No, I find it quite forgiving. I ended up using some Tamiya X2, which is good. It works fine with it works fine with their lacquer thinner, their retarder lacquer thinner, but also with Mr. Colour thinner as well. But it works. but I do prefer the lacquer version that they do. I've also have managed to get my my Trooper all painted up. Now, this was a bit of an effort in terms of just doing all the separate painting and bringing it all together, but we got there in the end, and this has been great fun. It really has been. And I am especially looking forward to finishing it off so I can have a trip down to Glasgow and hopefully meet up with Mr. Manton here and make sure that he gets a good look at my little Grogu there, because oh, the fun I had painting that today. All the while, all I could hear was Drewe cursing in the background. So, but yeah,
I hope you're not going to be putting all of your eggs in one basket, John.
Hey, very good, very good.
All I'm saying is there is still time to give that a pair of googly eyes and a shocked expression as the speeder comes towards it to spray it all over the landscape. That's all.
Let it go, please.
No, he's a sociopath at best and a psychopath at worst.
He's a
say,
baby.
I have to say that I've never heard anything quite so funny as Drewe having his emotional breakdown over a small green science fiction character that day when he went off on one about the eggs. It was extremely funny, I have to say.
Very good.
Yes.
Yeah.
We enjoyed
Mike Williams makes a very good point. Mike, trust me, I haven't forgotten this. He says, don't forget to weather the Speeder Trooper. Oh, yes, we will be weathering the Speeder Trooper. Yep, I'm looking forward to doing that. And it's been great. I mean, like I say,
with Grogu dripping down his helmet, maybe.
Something
like that. Maybe him holding up a severed head of an
Ewok. No, I am looking forward to finishing this off, so that I can have a trip down to Glastonbury, and also hopefully, Drewe, if you can tear yourself away from your from your dark fantasies there, you can come and join me. So that would be lovely. So that'd be nice. Nice bit of lunch in Glasgow. You what?
It's not dark fantasy. It's merely a fervent desire.
Oh, for goodness sake. Yes. Anyway, Spence, what are you working on at the moment then?
Well, against my much better judgment, bearing in mind I wrote about this in the week, I'm working on two things at the moment. I'm working on a French Navy de Havilland Vampire Mark V. One that's going to be overall navy blue.
Blue, excellent.
Because yes. I think the blue suits it down to the ground. And I'm also working on the Airfix Gannet as well. I'm sort of working on them slightly side by side. But yesterday I've started doing all of the sub-assembly work for the.
That Gannet does look spectacular, doesn't it?
It is spectacular, I have to say. One of the things that is kind of interesting about the kit is that is the need for nose weight, and there's considerable amount of nose weight in this at the moment. There's 15 grams sat about there, and then another 55 grams needs to go in there. So 60 grams of nose weight has to sit inside this model to keep it on its wheels, which is a lot, really. If anybody has any idea what 55 grams of nose weight, that's that lot. Half a shot glass has got to go into that space in there. Now, what's interesting about this is that inside this model is that. That's the weapons bay. And on top of that weapons bay is a bathtub. You can see it there. And inside that bathtub is the initial amount of weight that it tells you to put it on. There's also another part. This thing here, this is another bathtub that I assume was originally to sit there. You can see bathtub sits there, into which weight goes to hold it in place. But then I think that they realized that you weren't going to get all of that into that little space there. So what they did then is they took that out of the instructions. That's no longer part of the instruction sheet. And now all you do is you glue the whole thing together. You glue the fuselage together, you glue all the nose together, and you just pour the whole lot in. What I'll do is I'll mix 5-minute epoxy with that so that it's all sticky, and then I'll just pour the whole lot into that space. That's a lot of weight. I don't think I've ever built a model that's had more weight in it than this thing's going to have. But aside from that, it is magnificent. There's a lot of talk about the seeking and how good the seeking is and everything. I think this is better than the seeking. I think this is a better kit. I think it's more detailed. The interior is better. I think the interior in the seeking is okay. There's kind of quite a lot of detail on the floor of the rear compartment, but the walls are just almost forgotten. They're so bare. Whereas this thing has got lots of interior detail. You can kind of see inside there.
Yeah.
And you start to build it up in layers. But what I love about this model is the way that Airfix have treated the surface detail on it. Because of the roundness of the fuselage, the detail looks a bit heavier on the fuselage than it does on the wings. But there's so much detail on this thing in terms of panel lines and the rivets that they've put in and all of that kind of thing. It really is an absolute delight. It's a very nice kit, I have to say, very nice. And the way it's designed makes a very complex aeroplane and a very complex shape pretty easy to put together, you know. So
that was a quick show.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be one of those things as well, thanks to those recesses in there, and also these spars that run through those recesses. It's going to mean that I'm going to be able to build this in modules like I did with the Tomcat. That I can build all of the fuselage together, paint decal the whole thing, son wings, and then I can glue everything else in place and just slide the wings into place so that all of those structures can be built individually and painted individually, and then all brought together, which is going to make masking a lot easier. The one slight thing I don't like about it necessarily is that the 3 color schemes that are in the kit are, 2 of them are okay. One of them is just really dull. And the one I want to do, which is the one from Cold Rose, which is where my mum was based, is the least interesting of those. So I was kind of having a look at it. There's one from Arc Royal, which is obviously this one. This is the one from Cold Rose, which has got the red spinner on it. I think this is going to be the one that I'm going to do, but it is the least interesting. And then there's one that's got invasion stripes or D-Day stripes, whatever they are. These things here.
That was
Suez stripes, but we haven't got any yellow.
Now, the other thing about this as well is that sort of having a look at this, I was trying to find photographs of it while I was thinking about putting this thing together. And I was trying to find photographs of it with wings folded, and whether or not you could have all the wings folded with weapons under the wings. And I found very few of those. So to have the wings folded, it's not going to have rockets on, and it's not going to have whatever the other stores are on there. So that's going to limit my options slightly, I think. But once it's finished, I think this is going to be a really nice model. I'm more excited about this than I've been about other projects that have come across my bench recently. And I think Airfix should be rightly proud of what they achieved with this, because, like I say, they translated something that's very complex into a package that's really well done. I
will get one at some point, because I quite like to do a COD 4 in RAF Grey at some point. But I'm waiting now. I'm waiting for the Sword AEW3, because that's the one I really want. So which won't be as nice as that, but will hopefully sort of pretty good these days. So.
I mean, certainly in terms of looking at some of the surfaces, the wings in particular, I was looking at the sort of the levels of detail. The Airfix detail, the detail that the Airfix designers have put onto this thing is really up there now. The riveting and that kind of thing in there. People have sort of said, oh, well, you know, Edouard's riveting is fantastic, and it is. But the delicacy of some of the detail on these wing parts here, that's every bit as good as Edouard are creating at the moment. in a much larger, much more complex package. And I was thinking about this yesterday and thinking about what it is that Eduard create and sell on. And their packages are very much single-engined fighters at the moment, aren't they? If you think about it, the Wildcat or the Zero or the P-51B family, which they're working on at the moment, Spitfires and that kind of thing. There are very few companies out there that are doing for British subjects as complex and large as this thing. Very few companies out there are doing it and incorporating the levels of detail that Airfix are incorporating. And it may sound like I'm being a bit of a fanboy, and that's not the case, because I have built Airfix kits recently where I've thought that's not great. That could have been much better. The Hunter, for instance, when that came out, it was not great, really. There was so much that wasn't part of the package. But with this thing, I think they've just kicked it up a notch completely. The Sea King kicked it up a notch. The Buccaneer, which I haven't yet seen and will build at some point, I think. But that's another one where it's just, they seem to have gone up another gear and showing kind of what
I think the thing I'm encouraged by at the moment is that that they seem to have got onto a constant curve of improvement. In previous years, they've gone, from release to release, it's gone up and down in quality quite often. And now we appear to be on a consistent curve of improvement, which is good to see. I was talking about the nose weight. Remember the Bronco debacle, the ICM Bronco. I was packing as much nose weight into that as I possibly could.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then somebody pointed out that you don't need any.
Oh, you do.
that model will balance.
Well, the weird thing about
the 72nd one won't. The 48th one will just about balance, and you only.
I couldn't get that. I sort of. I remember you saying something about that at the time, and I built mine without nose weight, put it on its wheels, and it went dunk. And I went, oh, okay. So I held it down and thought, oh, it was all sort of complete. And in the end, what I had to do, and on my model, I had to tip it upside down and tip nose weight into the gear bay, and then through the doors and everything. So inside my gear bay isn't any gear bay detail. It's just a lot of
mine is just loaded with nose weight everywhere.
Yeah, it is sort of extraordinary. I think another thing as well is with this kit that's helping is the quality of the plastic as well. They've now sort of settled on this dark grey hard plastic.
It's the biggest thing we were on about for 15, 20 years is the quality of the plastic, wasn't it? Because even a lot of the stuff that was done 10 years ago, that I was kind of, if they actually pop that out again, but in the new plastic, it would look completely different.
I think it would. And I had this. I've just completed the Meteor T8, which is the one I did rather than the F8, and I built that from its initial release in that pale blue plastic or pale bluey grey plastic. And I do wonder what the new kit, the new release of it, would be like in the dark grey plastic. And whether
I built the 48th one from the dark grey hard plastic.
And did you have any issues with it?
It's beautiful.
Yeah,
it was beautiful. I mean, I say beautiful. I still had to do a little bit of sanding and rescribing around, putting the engine covers on and stuff. But that's as much a feature of just the breakdown of the model as anything. But it was an absolute pleasure to actually build it, because everything that plastic just makes a world of difference. The Victor. Really I don't generally speaking build very large models. I built 2 of the Victors.
Yeah.
And enjoyed both hugely.
I can't imagine what that Victor would have been like if it had been molded.
It would have been just
plastic. It would have been a real nightmare. But because it needed to have that stiffness, didn't it? And that was the thing with the Meteor, was that you're kind of sanding it, and it's not.
It's flexing and bowing into you, isn't it? It's
biting me all the way. Especially when you're doing it in a sprayed aluminium finish. You're trying to get. It was the underside of the engine nacelles that were the problem. When you sort of fix those in place, there was like a slight little step underneath there. And I looked at it and I thought that's kind of interesting, because they do an FR. Is it an FR9?
Yeah, I did the FR9.
And I really like the idea of that. I like the color scheme. I like that. is it grey and PRU?
Yeah, I did it. It's there's light slate grey and medium sea grey top sides with PRU blue undersides.
Yeah, just sort of.
They were flying them. They were, at one point they were flying them. The same squadron was flying some in painted silver, some in dark sea grey, dark green, and some in light slate grey.
Yeah,
medium sea grey. So they had at some points. I think I might have been Dave Fleming last week shared a picture of 3 of them in formation. I think they were landing, and each one was in a different scheme.
Yes, love it.
The same squadron. It was
yeah. It's so that's sort of where I am really. And the Vampire is I'm using the plan. What sort of fired that off really was that I was talking to Jean-Pierre at the Bolton show, and he'd got a set of decals for the Aeronaval Vampires. And I thought, oh, that's kind of nice. That looks tasty. And he just went, yeah, as Jean-Pierre always does. He just went, well, hey, use the sheet if you want to sort of use it. And although the Airfix kit offers a French version, it doesn't offer the one in blue. And there is something beautiful about those overall blue French machines, and I thought, yeah, I'm gonna have a crack at that and see what that. So I bought some bits and bobs for it. I bought I bought some seat straps for it, and what else did I buy for it? Oh, I've just ordered some from Hannon. So I ordered a couple of bits of Edward resin for it for the instrument panel, which is designed for a Mark III, but I'm so fly and so incapable of sticking to my to my research notes that I'm prepared to compromise, because the instrument panel and site just look the same to me.
We'll never tell. We'll never tell a person. We'll never tell.
Absolutely not. So that's sort of where I'm going with that really. So it's 2 48 scale Airfix kits and 2 different subjects. That's the sort of the next thing. To answer your question, there we go. Done.
Superb.
Thank you.
Both for magazines.
One for Marcus and one for Brett. So the Vampire's for Brett, Gannet is for Marcus. So yeah, I seem to be doing nothing but 50s British subjects at the moment, or kind of weird esoteric stuff from back in the day, but I kind of like it really. At some point I'll bring things up to date and do something new. Maybe not.
Probably an eagle.
Another eagle. Yeah, Japanese Air Force one. Yes, an aggressor. That's kind of
one of the there's plenty of variety there, isn't there?
There really is. Yeah, there really is. But and then after that, I think it's I'm looking around to see what's next on. Minicraft P47D is scheduled for Marcus as well, and then for I don't know what's scheduled for Brett after that. Actually, I haven't got anything. I'm looking around the room and I'm thinking I'm not sure. So it could be anything. Monogram B24J, maybe. There you go. That's what it could be.
Is that going to be for a new kind of legacy series books about monogram aircraft kits, or is it just a one-off? No.
I can't hear you. Sorry, John. I can't. You've gone. You asked me a question, but I couldn't quite hear what it was.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah. Oh, that was weird. You just dropped out there for a little while. Don't know as the answer to that.
I refuse to be drawn.
I refuse to be drawn on any
future projects. That's fine. That's fine.
Future projects that I maybe do. I'm all in the same way that I can't quite be drawn on whether or not I'm working on a monogram F4 at the moment.
Well, you wouldn't be, because you only build one model at a time. So,
well, no, you're not. You're building 2 at the moment. You're building an Airfix Gannet and an Airfix Vampire. So,
yeah, which is So I talked about this, didn't I? I talked about this in a week. I do find it very, very difficult to focus on more than I see a lot of things online. I see a lot of modelers online who are working on like bloody thousands of different kits, and I I just can't do it. So I'm working on 2 things at the moment, but what I've done with them is I did all the sub-assembly work on one, put it in the box, and I'm doing all the sub-assembly work on the other, putting it in the box, and then
I was about to say. I mean, I had this discussion just earlier with John. Is that the Chieftain? I got it all flatted down this week. That Chieftain, and I started weathering it. And at this point, I've just put it in a box. And I'm going to put it aside for a month or 2 because I'm completely wading through treacle with it. I can have more than one project on a go at a time, but I only focus on one project at a time. If that makes sense. So what I'm not going to do is spend an evening on a project and then do an hour on another project at the end of the evening or something like that. That Chieftain will be packed up and put away.
Yeah.
And I'll get on with something else.
Yeah.
And at some point, I'll finish something else and I'll go, oh, that Chieftain. And I'll pull it down. But at that point, that will be the focus again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can have multiple projects on the go, but I only work on one at a time.
Mike's mentioned there about the A10. I'm really struggling with that A10. And I'm not struggling with it because of the kit or what it looks like or how nice the kit is. I'm struggling with it because I lost my impetus and I lost when I'm working on something, I tend to be completely obsessed with it at that point, and it's the only thing I think about. Once that obsession drops away from me, I find it very difficult to get it back. But it's not unusual. It's not unique to modeling for me. If I start reading a book and I put it down for a few days, it's very rare I ever go back to it. If I start watching a television program and I watch like 5 or 6 episodes, and then a week goes by and I haven't watched another episode of it in a series, let's say, I don't know, iRobot or something. If I watch 5 or 6 episodes and I'm like, oh, this is great thing I've ever seen, and then I go for a week and don't watch it, I never go back to it.
I find that's quite a big issue for me these days with seasons of shows.
Yeah,
is that they are so sporadic and there's no rhyme. It used to be, oh, it's September, it's time for the new season of Game of Thrones or something, and you were wait every year. It was a saying. Now it's like, I know The Boys is coming back in a month or 2, but it's been nearly 3 years. And it's just like
weird, isn't it?
it just. I don't know how people can get excited about something when they don't know when it's going to be back.
It's just this obsessive. I think it's my obsessive approach to things, and I'm interested in them, for a set period of time. It's one of those reasons. I don't think I could the long projects. That the Harrier T2 conversion was a project that I worked on for give or take 6 months. I think it was about 6 months, May to November. The idea that I could ever work on a model for 6 years is almost impossible for me to comprehend, because I'd never be able to keep the enthusiasm. And if I'm picking something else up and then going back to that, I'd never be able to go back to it. And I see when I posted about my focus or my inability to focus on more than one thing at a time, some people were saying, oh, I've got 20 models on the go. And I'm like, well, I couldn't give them my attention if I had that many. And I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't do that. It just isn't something that my brain can function with. It's at the moment,
it doesn't work for you as a.
It just doesn't. No, I don't think it does, and I don't find it enjoyable either. I guess one of the best analogies I can give, it's like going out with a big group of people for an evening. And if you go out with 2 or 3 people, you're all having a conversation within a group of 3 or 4, and you're all chatting away, and everybody's getting equal focus from you, and you're getting something back equally from those people. If you go out with a group of 20 people, you might still only talk to 4 or 5 people, but you've missed out on the other 15 because your inability to focus and give them any attention and for them to give you attention back. And I feel that about my work. I feel that about my model making. I've got to focus on it as much as I can. Otherwise, frankly, the results are awful. They are terrible. I used to do a thing when I was at Military Inscout where a guy who worked for me, he built models. for us and reviewed them, and I painted them. So what would happen is he'd build 2 of something, and he'd say, right, I'll build 2 of these kits. You can keep 1, and I'll have 1, you have 1, and I'll just, you know, and that's how we'll sort of work around it. Almost without exception, and I did quite a few of these. The second one that I built for myself went in the bin because it was rubbish, because all of my energy had gone into the first one, and my enthusiasm had gone into the first one, and I sort of blew
I also find that as you get further into any given build, a lot of the processes you're using on that build become quite time sensitive.
Yeah.
So you can actually, it's like a lot of masking techniques and stuff are very time sensitive. You leave latex liquid mask on a model for too long. I have had absolute horror shows getting that off.
Yeah.
You know, leave masking tape on for too long, it starts lifting at the edges. You certainly can't use any of the, you know, the putties or anything and leave them on for more than literally minutes really before they start settling. So I find that the further you get into a project, the more time sensitive a lot of the processes become. And it's also easy. I sometimes open up a box of a model that I've put aside, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And all the pots of paint I was using are in it. And I'm like, oh, that's why I couldn't find that.
That's where everything went.
Because what I didn't want to do was get 2 years down the line and need to use that paint and not know where it is or not have it anymore. And knowing that, I mean, paint manufacturers are notoriously unreliable with consistency in their own colours, in their own ranges.
Yeah.
We've seen it massively in the last few years, but it's just general. So if I pick up a pot of medium C grade 2 years down the line and it's a fresh pot and it's going on a model that I built 2 years ago, the chances of it matching are practically zero. So I end up with all these little projects boxed up and put to one side, but there's got stacks of stuff in there that I would otherwise be using for other things.
Yeah, that's actually a really good idea to do that, because, like you say, if you want to get it so that it matches perfectly, then that is a really kind of sensible idea.
I mean, I've just boxed this chieftain up, but. Oh, I made a liar of me. There it is over there. But that pot of dark sea grey, dark earth. And then next month I'll build a Spitfire Mark 1 or something and need dark earth. And I'll open a fresh pot because I've forgotten that one's in there. But I wouldn't want to use that one anyway because there's not much in it and I might need it for this tank.
Yeah.
Got a question here. Steve Moores says, does anyone spray a clear sealer coat over masking tape to seal the edges to prevent seepage?
Yeah, I do it a lot.
I have done in the past,
Yeah, I do it a lot. I did it with the Meteor, with when I was doing that fluorescent color on it. That had, those edges were all sealed with gloss. I do it a lot.
Okay.
Because it really works.
Or the underlying color as well.
Yeah, sometimes I'll use the underlying color or a clear coat. Yeah.
The other thing I do as well is I always now, if I'm masking off sharp edges, I always put the tape onto my cutting mat and cut the edge, because no masking tape has got a perfectly straight edge to it. So I always cut it.
That's funny, because I can remember you saying you've never done that.
Yeah, now I do. Now I'm obsessed.
You never used to do it. And we were saying, oh, no, I always put it on a cutting mat and cut a fresh edge. And you're like, what are you doing, you weirdos? I've never done that in my life. And now, Pollard, now...
This is the thing, though. This is the thing, isn't it? I think you become a bit more obsessive about these kind of things, don't you? And it's... And sort of through these kind of, you talking about VMS varnishes, you telling me about VMS varnishes. There was another one as well that you told me about, and I thought, and you said, oh, you should try this. And I was thinking, oh, is that going to work? And then it did. I can't think what it is now, but it was like a genius idea. And I thought, Drew told me this. This is brilliant. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting thing about working to deadlines. That, the thing is that my deadlines are month to month. So I have a 3-week rotation with 1 week off, tend to be with work in terms of deadlines. So my 3-week rotations tend to be from the 1st of the month to around about the 21st, 22nd of the month. That's when projects get fitted in. And then from the 21st of the month to the end of the month tends to be a break. I don't work full time, so I have a break at the end of it and all of that sort of stuff. And I know this because I've been building, I've essentially built models professionally to deadline since 1992, and since 1992, I've maybe built a couple of dozen models in that 30 odd years or whatever it is since then that have been for myself and not been for publication. No, actually, there's less than that. There's probably 20 models that I built for myself, not for publication. And so I get to that point where the reason why I try not to build more than one at a time is I have to remove any possibility that I'm going to make a mistake, because I only have 3 weeks in a block. I don't have open-ended deadlines. So the boys will say to me, look, we need an article and we need it on this date. This is going to where it falls. And they both fall on about the same date every month. And so it doesn't really matter what I build. And they'll say, can you do it within this gap? If I was to work on more than one model at a time and my focus dropped and one of those models went south, I have got 0 time to react to that.
No backup plan.
And then give them material. And my contract is that I have to give them material every single month without exception. I can't have a break. I can't. So I couldn't say to one of them, I've screwed up your model. I'm really sorry. Can I give it you next month? Because they'll say, right, well, we needed 14 pages from you this month. You're going to have to fill that some other way. So I always have to have that kind of thing. It's not possible for me to be in a position where I can, spend 3 days stripping a model down and respraying it. I have to make sure that everything is done right. So I've sort of got to that point now where, touch wood, I don't really make mistakes anymore. If that's not big ones, I might make a couple of minor mistakes, but I don't really make big mistakes because it is so time sensitive. So yeah, it is difficult when you're working on deadlines. If I didn't do this as a job and I was doing something else, I think I probably would work on more than one thing at a time, because it allows me that sort of flexibility to do that. But I'm quite obsessive about it, and I need to. Anybody you two guys have spent quite a lot of time in my company, so you know how obsessed I get. If I hadn't have been this focused and this obsessive, I wouldn't have done the Century series. I wouldn't have stuck to doing those 6 models essentially back to back, with all of that sort of stuff. I wouldn't have been able to do that. So yeah, it's a funny thing. I don't think I'm going to ever change now. I'm too old to. We're all the same age, so I don't think we're ever going to be able to change, are we? We're where we are.
No. I know at the moment that I am really trying to clear these. I got 2 projects on the go at the moment. One is the Mandalorian speeder bike for Jadlam in Glastonbury, and the other one is I'm desperately trying to finish off that Sabre Hanomag tractor for Frome Model Centre, because they gave that kit to me. It was goodness me, that was a year ago, and that was the last time I went to Frome before I went on holiday. And it was. I need to get it finished. It's sat here. It's painted. It's partially weathered, and I frankly fancy a trip to Frome and I fancy a trip to Glastonbury. So I want to get them finished so I can get them done and out the way. Can
I ask you a question about that? Why didn't you finish the Hanomag before you started the speeder bike?
I was trying to. But the speeder bike turned up, and I thought, right, I'll get bits of that done out of the way whilst I'm still doing stuff on the Hanomag. I was trying to do project management, and I sucked at it. So
right. Was it a case? Be honest. Was it a case of shiny new bauble?
A little bit. But they are 2 completely different projects. One is a factual tractor. The other one is a fictional science fiction thing. So I thought if I juggle the 2, here we go. Dave Fleming says Magpie Syndrome. Ooh, shiny. Yeah, absolutely. And John Huston reminds me, Mini Cooper. I'm just looking at it on the shelf here, John.
Oh my God, it's coming from all. I bet you're glad you asked me on now, aren't you? Putting you in this position.
We're all in the same. We all have the same thing. We all have these projects that we look at and go, oh, I must get on with that, and I must get on with that, and you know, we've all got projects stashed away. You know,
I've got a 32nd scale F15 up in the loft that I've been working on now since 1998. And it's.
I mean, I got that bloody B17 last week from. Oh, Jad Lamb just popped up. Hi, Russ. I got a B17 from Jad Lamb last week, and I was like, and now it's just sat there staring at me.
It's a sweet kit, isn't it?
It's beautiful.
Nice
it's beautiful.
Really nice kit,
It really is. I finally noticed that they're releasing the Grand Slam Lancaster M48. So finally, a 48 scale Lancaster I want to build as well.
I thought you didn't build big models.
I don't, but I'm actually. I think it must be another function of age, is that big models suddenly don't appear so big, whereas 72nd models appear absolutely minuscule.
I was just going to say, he's going to redefine what he thinks is a big model now.
As you get older, I think you do. I mean, I really, really want to, you know, that is probably going to be my next project, but it is flipping tiny.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that long, you know.
To answer John, I've got comments coming in. John Connor, the answer to that is, in my case, absolutely not. And the reason for that is because a lot of we photograph everything in stages, so I can't hide anything. But also, these models go to shows. You know, we take them to shows and we put them on display. So a lot of the work that I've done in the previous year goes to, you know, we take to Scale Model World or whatever, and we do all of that sort of stuff. No, I very much treat every model that I build as if I'm building it for competition to that level. I never drop from that. And if I were to drop from that, and I have done this when I was editing and I was, you know, and I was at military in scale, if there were models where I felt that the standards had dropped below what I wanted them, and there was quite a good example of this was done 3 or 4 years ago when Airfix released their 72nd scale Royal Navy Buccaneer, which I actually put a load of photographs online while I was building it. I was so disgusted with the finish that I put on it. I put my foot on it, and I apologized and said, this isn't going in, it's rubbish. And I threw it in the bin. So yeah, and that takes us back to another comment that was made earlier on about the Beaufort group build. That's my fault.
Just about to say, has anybody
that's my fault.
Mine's
because I didn't like what I'd done on the model. I couldn't get it the way that I wanted, and I contacted these two guys and said, look, this isn't working for me. I can't finish this model to the standard that I want to finish it. I'm not going to finish it. I boxed it up and I threw it in the bin. And at that point, I think I'd pretty much done all the airframe and everything. And it was at a point where
mine was just before masking the canopies for painting, and I just completely, because I'd re-riveted mine and everything.
You did,
you know, but for some reason, I just suddenly completely ran out of any impetus for it whatsoever, and it sat up there on a shelf for about a year. And not that long ago, actually, sort of just before Christmas, I think, it came down off the shelf and it went in the bin.
Yeah, mine was the same, and it's.
That's not a fault of the kit. To be clear, that is absolutely not a fault of the kit.
That was
because it's a really nice model.
It was the deep irony of it, wasn't it? We really loved the kit. It just didn't sort of work. So
all three of us, and I think once
I didn't start it.
Well, no, but that's we don't expect you to.
Wow.
But once you'd actually once you sort of broken the seal on that one, I sort of went.
It's a sort of a difficult thing, really. I think it's about, at the risk of coming across as being arrogant, and I don't mean it this way. From the moment that I wanted to be in magazines, to put my work in magazines, from that minute, I wanted to be able to create the best models I could to put on display because I knew so many people were going to see it. And I'd come out of the world of competing at that point. I was competing all over the place, and it was very much so. And I've sort of carried that forward really. And I hope that. I'd like to think that when people see my work in magazines or see my work online and everything, there isn't any disparity between individual builds, that they all look like they're kind of either of the same level or they're
signature Pollard models, aren't they?
Yeah, they're of my thing. If I would hate it if somebody saw it and went, God, what's happened to that? You know, where's that's really rough. That's not like his stuff. That I wouldn't put it in if it was that. You'd never see the finished model. If there was a model that I wasn't happy with and wasn't happy to put into print, you'd never see it, and I wouldn't even put it online. So,
but going back to the Beaufort, even now I still have a Beaufort on my long-term plan, but in relation to what we've been speaking about tonight, it's more likely to be a 48 scale one from ICM.
Yeah.
Gents, any other business?
God, that went quick.
John got bored with us.
No.
He just wants to blow us off.
Sorry?
He just wants to get rid of us. What's going on?
This is his side hustle to his ghost stories.
Oh, there is that. Yeah, obviously. Yes.
He likes to get rid of us in record time so he can get on with his ghost stories.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. So I turn up for the first time in however long, and before even an hour's gone by, it's like, that's it.
Yeah. 57 minutes and he's checking out.
Wow.
I'm not. I am giving you both the opportunity to extend the show by having any other business.
Yeah, I'll extend it.
I'm sure you will, Spence.
Mentioning about ICM, that Marauder is looking very nice. I have to say.
I'm actually, at the moment, I don't want to start that B-17 because that Marauder is supposedly imminent.
Oh, right.
And I don't want to be halfway through a B-17 and that Marauder gets released.
Yeah.
Because then we're back into what we've been discussing about having multiple projects on the go. And I really, really, really want to build that Marauder.
Yeah.
I mean, enough that I may look at ordering one direct from Ukraine.
Yeah, just to get hold of them.
And pay the attendant postage and stuff just to be, the first kid on the block with it.
I've got up in the loft. I've got the monogram kit, which is beautiful, and then I've got the AMT kit, which a lot of people said to me, "Oh, the AMT kit has got an even more incredible interior than the monogram kit." I actually picked up the AMT kit. Goodness me, 30 years ago at a model show at Bath. It is the interior on the AMT kit is really quite spectacular. Sadly, the exterior isn't much to talk about. There are some shape problems, I think is the best way of putting it.
I mean, that's checking out the ICM kit just looks like everything that you'd hope for from an ICM kit, doesn't it?
It's almost if it's not, then ICM have dropped the ball because ICM are so good these days.
Yeah,
and hopefully next year there'll be a B26G as well, so we can do all of the sort of long big wing Marauders sort of thing. But again, I mean, as soon as it turns up, I'll be picking through the sprue breakdown to see what other options are possible.
I'm like you, Drew. I mean, I don't know if you hold it in quite the same affection. I still think that if I'm pushed, I think the Marauder's the most beautiful aircraft that flew during the Second World War.
I get where you're coming from.
I can see that.
I certainly think it's the most beautiful twin-engined aircraft that flew during the Second World War.
It's just a complete hot rod, isn't it?
I'm more inclined to say that I think the A-20G was the best-looking twin-engined aircraft of the Second World War.
Oh,
but that's just me. Spence, got a question for you here from Hobby Time. He says, would you consider a reprint of the Harrier book?
I would consider a reprint of the Harrier book if I had enough orders.
Right.
Yeah, if enough people wanted it, if enough people contact me and say, Spence, can you reprint the Harry book? Then I'll happily reprint it. I'll do, but I have to have a certain number for it to be a viable project. Otherwise, it costs, and it's a fortune to print these books in the first place. But printing them in very small numbers is, so I'd need at least 20 people to make a reprint viable. And if I got that, then yeah, absolutely would be. Yeah,
Spencer's assertion that the B-26 was the most beautiful twin-engine aircraft of the Second World War. Literally, I was going to say it stirred up a hornet's nest, but it's not. It's a mosquito's nest, because Dave Fleming says mosquito. Russell Taylor says mosquito.
I mean, I like the mosquito, but I'd take the Heinkel 219 over a mosquito every way till, and I'd also take the Black Widow over the mosquito.
Yeah, I think the mosquito sort of sits in my area of affection in a similar way to the Hunter. I can sort of see that the Hunter is an attractive aircraft, but it's dull as ditch water. The mosquito, it kind of fits in that. I appreciate that it's a fabulous machine, and it was, what it did was incredible. As a feat of engineering, incredible. I find as a subject to build, as a model maker, as a subject, I just find it really boring. It doesn't really light the fires.
So now you're talking about me and the Canberra.
Oh, the Canberra is very similar. I think the Canberra
is just so phenomenally dull.
Yeah,
it's a tube with planks.
It really is.
It's a tube with planks, which doesn't mean it wasn't a phenomenal aeroplane in every possible sense of the word. An absolutely amazing aeroplane, but it's a tube with planks.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's sort of a bit like that, isn't it? And yeah, I don't know. The Mosquito, the Hunter, the Canberra, they're a bit like modern electric cars, aren't they? They're functional and they do what they do brilliantly, but you just don't want to look at them for very long.
You really put the cat amongst the pigeons here, haven't you? Yeah, Beaufighter. There you go, Beaufighter.
It's like the B-17. The B-24 is a better looking machine than the B-17.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
The Thunderbolt is a better looking and more interesting machine than a P-51 Mustang.
The Tempest is a better looking and better machine than the Spitfire.
Yeah, the Hurricane is a better looking and more interesting machine than the Spitfire. It's kind of, I don't know where you sort of go with these things really, and although I inevitably will change my mind about these things, because I remember having a conversation with you, probably Drew, about the F-22 Raptor, and I certainly had this conversation with a friend of mine last weekend at a show, saying how boring I thought the Raptor was when it first came into service, and how it wasn't an F-15, and the F-15 was, and then I started watching very high resolution, slowed down, very high speed footage of Raptors doing their thing in their now very weathered finishes, because now they just look.
Oh, there's some absolute.
They're absolutely battered now, aren't they? And now I'm thinking the Raptor might be the coolest thing I've ever seen in flight. It is just magnificent.
I mean, that was one that could possibly stand revisiting in kit form as a build, because you would have to, much like one of the TPS Tomcats, you'd really have to plan your finishing, because some of them are really, really messy now.
Oh, they really are. Well, they look almost now, don't they? They look like they're sort of ancient natural metal aircraft with dissimilar panels all over them that's just had some camouflage randomly sprayed over the top of it. They're really odd looking now. But oh my God.
It feels like they don't really they don't touch in paint, they replace entire panels.
Yes, indeed. They just look terrible.
There's no real touching in of paintwork going. It's entire panels and stuff like that.
Chris Buchholz says moist beautiful. It's Chris from New York. Moist beautiful US twin of World War II, the PV-1 Ventura.
No, but there you go. But look at Chris being all wrong.
Yes, it is.
He's only saying that because he's building one and has been building it for many years.
Yeah, it just sort of opens up things, doesn't it? What we sort of like and the things that we do. And I mean, Is it the Tempest that you like the most, or is it Typhoon? Tempest, yeah. I mean, and I think it's just because they're just brutes, aren't they? That's the thing.
Yeah, I mean that's why I love the Tempest. It's just such a in any engine format it was just always a big, almost, it wasn't as big as a Thunderbolt, but it was more in the Thunderbolt's ballpark than it was a Mustang's ballpark. Put it that way. And it was a big, very, very successful fighter that was only limited by the fact it came into the war so late. And I think a lot of the thing is as well, people seem to think there's this sort of perception that the Tempest took over from the Typhoon. And I mean, the Typhoon remained in production till the end of the war. And the Typhoon was a ground attack aircraft, whereas the Tempest was used almost exclusively as a fighter. It didn't really do a lot of ground attack work, apart from, it did strafing and stuff, but it wasn't a dedicated ground attack aircraft like the Typhoon was. It was used as a fighter. And it was 1-to-1 with the late production Focke-Wulfs and 109s, and could take them on, and Messerschmitt 262s for that matter. And that's why I just love the Tempest. It was just limited by its, by the time it came along, rather than.
Yeah, I mean, it was a magnificent looking machine.
It's why I mean, I love it. I mean, when you think that in terms of size, it's not that different to a Sea Fury. But that extra little section of wing that pushes the wings out and gives it slightly bigger wings just makes it look so much more brutish than a Sea Fury, which is very, very refined. And I love the Sea Fury as well, don't get me wrong. But I do think I prefer the Tempest.
Yeah. I mean, you and I are both as sort of excited as we are about the Marauder kit coming out, and I'm certainly, that's definitely on my radar to do one of those. I think I'm really looking forward to seeing how it looks, and finally, because the Marauder is in my bizarre little collection or list of favourites that I've never modelled. So I've never modelled the Marauder is my favourite twin engine aircraft. Never built one. B-24 is my favourite 4-engine bomber. Never built one. So it kind of Jaguar, arguably my favourite RAF jet. Never built one. P3 Orion. Never built one. Hercules. Never built one. All these are on my list of favourites, and yet they remain unrequited loves almost. They're not. They haven't been done. So
there is a new P3 en route, isn't there? From somebody.
P3, yeah, absolutely.
We don't know who yet.
There is an amazing looking thing.
We know there's a new P3 en route, but we don't know quite who from. Probably Academy, I think. But
I just love them. I just love the whole.
I can see the Marauder being the one that you and I was fairly similar with the original Tamiya Lightning. We built them almost at the same time.
We did, yeah.
The Marauder will be much the same.
Yeah, we had an interesting conversation at the show last weekend. It got mentioned about the Tamiya's 48 scale kits, and one of my friends sort of said to me, he said, I've just built the F4 Phantom. He said, I'm thinking about, which is the he said, I think that's the best aircraft kit that Tamiya have ever made. And I said, you're wrong. It is the Tomcat. The Tomcat is the best. And then I stood there and I was kind of looking around the room, and he went, what are you thinking about? And I went, I'm thinking about the P38 Lightning, actually. And he just went, he said, are you going to tell me that that's the best? And I sort of, and you sort of take a double take, and you go, I'm really not sure now, actually, because that P38 that
it's a gorgeous model.
It's incredible, isn't it? It really is an incredible piece of kit. Yeah, and it is another one of those that's like an engineering masterclass, isn't it? How to put these things together, and how it all clicks together, and
everything just works. Everything just works.
Oh, it's just brilliant. And then we'll build another one of those, I think, as well at some point. But interesting year ahead with the releases. There's going to be some great stuff, I think.
Perhaps we should do a B-26 group build.
No, because then we'll
hey, John, you'll say you'll do it, and then 18 months down the line, you'll still be working on your little Hanomag.
Yeah, I probably will be, actually. Yep. I didn't come here to be insulted. Why? Where do you usually go then? So there we go. Gents, it has been a pleasure. Spence, if you just need to,
if we play this right.
Yeah, you just need to commit to do a show. That's it. That's it. And we will do an extended one. So we will definitely do that.
Late tonight, wasn't I? Yeah.
You are?
I was a bit late tonight.
No. Honestly, we'll work something out. We'll do an extended show at some stage. So that would be good fun. But gents, it has been.
Ghost stories slip away from him now, and he's desperately.
You are.
John's seeing ghost stories slip away from him now.
No, I'm not. I sometimes start them about 9 o'clock at night. I'm quite happy. The later the better. I just want to say
he's going to drink while he's having.
There is that. That's what
it is.
Yeah.
He's gagging for a beer.
The show is described as a show where I drink ghost stories and read whiskey. So there we go. Just want to say a big thank you to all these organisations who have assisted us over the last few months or so. So a big shout out to Jadlam, Premium Hobbies, Antics and Froome Model Centre. Hopefully, next Sunday's show, hopefully, we're going to have Mr. Ian Hartup on the show, and we're going to do yet another car roundup, which will be good fun. So
Ian was brilliant, wasn't he?
He was absolutely fabulous.
He was very good. Yeah, he was. He will no doubt.
Well, it shows about. I mean, because I know nothing about cars or car models.
Yeah.
So when you need to do a show to catch up with what is actually a fairly dynamic part of the market, Ian's the go-to, isn't he?
He is.
Ian is one of the. I know practically nothing about cars, and so if I build something, I tend to go to Ian and ask him his advice and everything. And when it comes to cars, he is singularly one of life's most infectious people when he gets onto it.
Wheel at each corner, engine usually somewhere at the front, but not always.
Yes, try
but
to
not always.
It's even more. He's even more infectious when he's doing that. He is genuinely one of.
I know I've got some car builds on the horizon for this year, so I'm very keen to kind of to take on Ian's advice and what he has to say. So, gentlemen, it has been an unmitigated pleasure to have the three of you in the virtual room this evening. So thank you all. Thank you to everybody who's tuned in tonight. I'm sorry we didn't get around to reading all of you. I sound like Vision On here. I'm sorry we didn't get around to reading all your comments, but thank you anyway. Keep an eye out because we will be updating the Facebook page with some of the projects we're working on at the moment. And like I say, next Sunday, fingers crossed, we'll have Ian Hartup on. So that should be good fun. So, as always, it just remains for me to say thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay out of trouble, and we'll see you very, very soon. So from myself and these two, bye for now.
Cheers all.